Hi guys, it's me ChazzaHDF and welcome to another episode of the podcast, and today it is a special episode where today we are giving our full season preview for F1 in 2019. We're going to go through all the teams, all of the drivers, and finally give our predictions, our final predictions for both the top 10 of the Drivers' Championship and also the Constructors. Hopefully you guys give your predictions later on as well, and of course you can get involved later on when we do the Q&A. But yeah, I cannot wait to do this finally. And also, I also want to say this. These predictions, we will come back to these at the end of the season to basically laugh at how horrible they most likely were. So yeah, we will come back to revisit these at the end of the season. So don't think that your predictions are going to go unnoticed. We will, or I will at least, try to keep an eye on what people are saying as to who's going to win the championship in both the drivers and the constructors and all the other positions as well. And good news, guys. My internet today is doing a lot better, and I think now we can have Nib on for the entire podcast, not for 15 minutes of him sounding like a robot. I think today we can have him on fully. I don't think it's going to be absolutely perfect. My computer's still not great in terms of its speed, but it's a lot better than it was on Tuesday. On Tuesday, in my area of the UK, we had a storm, so that's most likely why they had those issues. But before I bring Nib in, I just want to say hello to everyone watching, and hopefully you are doing well no matter where you are watching in the world. But now let me bring in Nib for today's preview. And Nib, hello, and also, how much are you looking forward to the season now that it's only 1 week away?
Hello guys, how is everyone doing? I'm doing well, and I absolutely cannot wait for the start of the season. It's race day here in a week's time now in Australia, so I'm very, very excited. And
Are you still, hold on, are you still speaking?
I just said, how are you?
Oh, you cut out then. Oh, that's a shame. Yeah, I'm all good, and I can't wait for to get into this preview and also for the first race. Also, I think there's a couple people saying I'm quiet. I haven't changed anything in my OBS, so I shouldn't be quiet at all. I should be absolutely fine because I haven't changed any of the settings. I'm at the same level that I normally am at. Maybe compared to, say, the recorded podcast that I did, the recorded podcast I did between the first and second test, I'd be quiet because I normally just raise my microphone level in my editing software. But yeah, sorry if I sound quieter than usual, but to be honest, there shouldn't be a reason for that. I haven't made any alterations to my settings. They sound, or they look absolutely fine to me. But anyway, we'll move on to the top of the field and start previewing how their seasons are likely to go. So first off, let's go into Mercedes, who didn't have the best preseason. Of course, the first test, they didn't really have a proper 2019 car. The second test they did, but it has become, I think, quite clear that they don't have the best car on the grid right now. It's not massive, the gap between them and Ferrari, but I don't think they do right now have best car. But I think Mercedes is still going to have a good season because we've had this for the last couple seasons where Ferrari tend to be at their strongest compared to Mercedes in the first, say, 6 or 7 races. And as the season goes on, Mercedes do tend to get better, especially in the final few races compared to Ferrari. So even if in Australia Ferrari get pole or lock out the front row, don't think that it's game, set and match for the championship because Mercedes do tend to improve as the season goes on. And I still think for Lewis Hamilton, despite right now not having the best car, I don't think he does. Again, I don't think Mercedes have the best car. I think he is still going to be very, very good, and it is going to be very hard for Sebastian Vettel, Charles Leclerc, Max Verstappen to beat this guy on a regular basis. I don't think it's going to be easy. And I think he will, even if for the entire season he's not in the best car. I think he will put up one hell of a fight for the drivers to keep hold of the Drivers' Championship that he's won in the last couple of years. And also, I think the team will try so hard to make sure Ferrari do not win the Constructors. But Nib, even though Mercedes haven't had the best pre-season, do you think they're still going to be very strong in 2019?
I don't think there can be much doubt that Mercedes will get better and better throughout the season. We've seen last year that their car did get better and better as the season went on, as they started to come to grips with the car, and as they come to understand the car, which I was going to talk about on the last podcast, but of course we had our issues. But yeah, Mercedes, they certainly don't have the quickest car at the moment, but that's only from what we've seen at Barcelona. Come Albert Park in a week, that it could have completely changed. They said that there wouldn't be many upgrades, but who knows? They could have a small few new things on the car, and boom, they could be right there on there with Mercedes. And because of the nature of Albert Park and it being very high, it could, and it certainly does favor Mercedes, in my opinion. So I think that we could see a change at Albert Park to what we've seen so far in pre-season testing. But I think at the start of the season, Ferrari will be the stronger of the two teams. But when it comes to the championship, Hamilton, he's the best driver on the grid for a reason, and he certainly will not go down without a fight, even if he doesn't have the quickest car. So it's certainly going to be an interesting and probably Mercedes' most difficult season of the V6 turbo era.
Yeah, it is going to be their toughest season. I still think, though, even if they don't have the best car, I still think they can have, some pole positions, race victories. You don't have to have best car to win the championship. We've seen plenty of examples of that in the past. So even though it's looking like this is probably going to be their toughest in the V6 turbo era, they could still end up winning the championship. And it really does depend on how they can develop the car over the course of 2019, but also it depends on drivers and what they can do over the course of the season and what they can do get the best out of the car. I think Lewis will get the best out of the car on at least most occasions. I think Valtteri Bottas is going to be kind of cut adrift, mostly hovering normally around P4, P5 in a Grand Prix. May only be in, say, the top three if Mercedes' car looking better than it normally is. But yeah, Lewis, I think will, as you said, he will not go down without fight. And I think we are going to have, even if Ferrari do consistently have the best car, I think we are going to have a titanic battle at the top between, I think, three drivers this season, but we'll get onto that in a bit. Next up is Ferrari. Ferrari had the best pre-season out of any of the teams. They did have a couple of reliability issues, but in terms of what they have for 2019 and the pace of the car and just how good it looks, they had the best pre-season. But can they translate that finally? The first time in 11 years, can they finally translate that into a title? I think this is one of the best chances, probably the best chance they have had since 2008 to win a title. And by the way, before anyone says, oh, they didn't win a title in 2008, yes, they did. They won the Constructors in 2008. Kimi Raikkonen, yes, was the last Drivers' Champion, but factually, Ferrari's last title was in 2008. I think this is probably their best chance to do so. But I'll be honest, with Ferrari, even if the car is very good this season, and I expect it to be very good, I don't quite trust them yet to really get the best out of the car in terms of results. I need to really be proven wrong on that, because if they keep up what they did last season, then they will get, say, I don't know, 6 or 7 race wins, but they may not get the absolute best out of the car in terms of results. I hope they do prove me wrong on that, and they really should. But I at the minute, I don't quite trust Ferrari. I need to be proven wrong on that. I just don't think getting rid of Arriva Bene and putting in Binotto is going to instantly mean World Championship. It might do. It might do. But I don't think at the moment I can say that I'm confident in Ferrari. They should have the car to win the championship this year, and they're going to be very, very strong. But I need to be proven wrong, as I just said, as to whether they can actually get the results needed to win either the drivers or the constructors. Now, Nib, I know you, when it comes to Ferrari, are very confident in their drivers, their car, also the team principal, now Matteo Binotto. Do you think, for the first time in 11 years, that they are finally going to win something? Oh, for some reason, your mic working? I can't hear you in Discord for some reason. Oh, that's why does these issues keep happening? Let me know, guys, in the chat. Can you hear Nib? Because I can't hear him at all. Unless it's my issue, but I can't hear Nib at all. No, they can't hear you for some reason.
Am I back?
Yep, now you're back.
Okay, good. Right. Yeah. So quite simply, yes, I do believe that Ferrari have certainly their best chance of the last for the last decade, the best chance they've got to win the title. Um, their car is very good. Certainly at the Catalunya circuit, I really really do like Matteo Binotto as their team principal. He just brings confidence to that team, and I think one of the main factors in why Vettel was so poor last year, made so many mistakes, is that he had so many things on his mind whilst he was in the car. And if he can take his mind off of those things whilst he's in the car, I think we then can see the best Sebastian Vettel once again. Because we've seen it the first half of the season, we've seen some of the best of Sebastian Vettel, but we didn't see it throughout the whole season. And in the end, he made too many mistakes. And that's certainly going to be a very big factor in the championship this season. And of course, whether or not operationally Ferrari can work at the same level as Mercedes can. Because Mercedes and, for me, Red Bull are the benchmark in how the teams are run on the F1 grid. So Ferrari are going to have to get towards that level, and if they have any hope of winning the title, even if they have such a great car that, say, if it is half a second ahead, which I don't think it is, it's probably close to 2 to 3 tenths. Then they could still not win the championship because they're not running the team well. So hopefully, with Binotto coming in, that will be sorted out for the Scuderia. But Ferrari, for the moment, certainly have their best chance in well over a decade to win the title.
Yeah, I think they do. And I'm hoping. I know I've criticised Ferrari plenty during 2018 and 2017, and also criticised Sebastian Vettel. But I do hope that finally they can get the job done, because I think they've been really underperforming with what they've had. People say, "Oh, well, the car's not as good, or wasn't as good as you think," but there's been drivers in past seasons who have had worse cars and done better in terms of contending for a world championship, if not winning it. And that's why I was criticizing them so much, because I was kind of also a bit disappointed that Ferrari really couldn't make the most of the car they had in 2017 and 2018. Cars were good enough to win a championship if you compare it to other seasons where drivers came even closer to winning the championship. So I'm hoping finally Ferrari maximize what they have with that car. I really hope they maximize what they have. They have to. If they fail again and bottle it again, then I don't see how they can, unless Mercedes really drop off in terms of pace 2020 or 2021. If they don't get the job done this season, I don't see how this team in this current form can really succeed unless we have a massive regulation change and they become like Red Bull in 2011. And then even if they do make mistakes, they still have a massively fast car. They absolutely have to win this season. There is no excuses. They have two of possibly the top 5 drivers on the grid. Best car on the grid right now. They have to win. They have to win. There is no excuses now. But moving on from Ferrari, and let's go on to Red Bull, who in testing, I think were sandbagging a lot compared to what they could do. They were focusing sensibly more on reliability, and I think that is the right thing to do because you want to get that sorted out before you get to the first Grand Prix. You don't want to be getting to the first Grand Prix like McLaren did a couple of times, still having to learn the power unit and how it works within your car, and also trying to make it reliable. You want to get that sorted out before you go out to the first Grand Prix in Australia, and I think they have done so. They are going to have reliability issues in 2019, and they will have grid penalties. Maybe not as much as they did with Renault, but they will have grid penalties, say at the Italian Grand Prix and tracks like that. But I think they are a dark horse for this season with Max Verstappen, because everything that's come out of Red Bull has been positive. The only negative has been Pierre Gasly's 2 crashes in testing. The Honda power unit seems to be working well. They've made upgrades on the power and also the power of the engine in qualifying mode, apparently. The reliability seems to be there. The Red Bull chassis, from what I saw at testing when I went to the second test, looks very, very good. I still think it is best chassis on the grid. The only thing they're really lacking in compared to Ferrari is power. I think they're a dark horse for this season. If they can get it right early with Honda, don't be surprised if Max Verstappen is consistent on race day, racing in the top 3 positions. Don't be surprised at all, because that could happen. It could happen if they do get it right early on and going forward for the rest of the season. Nib, for Red Bull, do you have hopes that they can maybe not mount a title challenge, but do you hope that they can be, say, just as competitive as last season, if not more?
I think with Red Bull, they certainly were going for more. Sorry, they weren't going for performance runs. So that's why we didn't really see them up the top of the timesheets during testing. They were focused on their long runs and the reliability of the Honda power unit, which seems to be very good so far. Honda did find some small issues with the power unit, that it was packaged a little bit too tightly, not tightly, and yeah, so they're going to address that issue by the time we get to Albert Park in, well, a few days' time now. So that's good that Honda are on top of that issue. But with Red Bull, from what we've seen so far, they're probably half a second off Ferrari, maybe a little bit closer. They certainly seem a lot more closer than last year. But for me, the main thing about this season is with the Honda power unit, is it going to be close enough to the performance of the Mercedes and of the Ferrari? Because anytime that they got close to a car last year, they just couldn't get near them in a straight. Like, they were only gaining, say, about a tenth in the straight with slipstream and DRS because of just how lacking the car was in horsepower. So it's going to be really interesting to see with Red Bull exactly where they are. Of course, they started off really well in practice last year, so I wouldn't read too much into practice. But once we get to qualifying, we'll really see where Red Bull are in in qualifying trim, with them actually being able to run a qualifying mode, because of course Renault did not have a qualifying mode last year. I'm not sure if they have one at the moment with this year's engine, but they certainly, I think they will be closer to Mercedes and Ferrari for sure, for sure. But for me, Gasly, I do think he's a good driver. Do I think he's deserving of a top team drive? No, I think there are drivers on the grid who are more deserving, but Red Bull could only go with him, really. They're never going to put Carlos Sainz and Max Verstappen together again. And after his 2 crashes in testing, it's not exactly the best way to start off your career with Red Bull. The pressure will be on immediately from Helmut Marko. So it'll be very interesting to see how Gasly performs throughout the season. But with Max, of course, it's Max. If he performs at the level he was at from Canada onwards, he'll be challenging for the title if Red Bull have the car. So it really is going to be a fascinating season at Red Bull.
Yeah, I think it will be. And the one thing I'm interested to see at the first race in qualifying is how much closer are they going to be in qualifying with qualifying mode with the Honda to Ferrari and Mercedes, because we have noticed this. In 2017 and 2018, Red Bull will be very close in the race, if not maybe the best car out there in the race. But in qualifying, they're so far off and so comfortably on the third row, for example. It was almost depressing, because you knew what they could do if they had more power in qualifying. And I'm hoping that that Honda qualifying mode can put them closer in qualifying, because I do want to see, maybe at races where you don't expect it, I do want to see Red Bull maybe sneak to the second row of the grid and not always be locked on the third row of the grid, because even if you do have the best car in terms of race pace, you can't be expected to win every Grand Prix from the third row of the grid. Sometimes you've got to be higher up. So I'm hoping that they do become a lot closer in qualifying. But of course, that does come down to Honda. But before we go on to the midfield, guys, I want to hear what you guys have to say about Mercedes, Ferrari and Red Bull. And what do you expect from those 3 teams in 2019? What do you expect? And what do you see really happening for those teams? But before I go on to the chat, and also make sure to comment that down below after this is up as a video. Don't forget to subscribe for more content like this, as every weekend there is not an F1 race. We do the podcast, and also I will be covering, of course, next weekend's 2019 Australian Grand Prix with plenty of content, watch-alongs, previews, reviews, all of that stuff. So don't forget to subscribe to the channel for that content coming up. Bottom right of the screen, you can do it right there, or click on my channel name, go to my channel page and subscribe for more content like this. But now, let me read out a few comments for, say, I don't know, 5 minutes, and then I'll move on to the midfield. The midfield is very, very close in very close in 2018. JB, Vettel, Leclerc, Hamilton, Verstappen, Bottas, Gasly. I think that's his top 6 in the championship prediction. Also, Chaz, have you set up an F1 Fantasy League? Thank you for reminding me. I will be setting that up tomorrow. I am actually going to be doing a stream tomorrow. That stream is going to be me. It's going to be kind of a special episode of This Week in F1 where I go in depth about the issues at Williams. Plenty of issues, and I want to do a stream about it. That's what I'm going to be doing tomorrow. But I will be setting up the Fantasy League tomorrow. So if you want to join that immediately, make sure to join the Discord server, because that's where I'm going to post it first. And then I'll also post it on Twitter, so don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Chaz6110 for that. Let me look at some more comments. Fat Boot says, like I said again, first a Ferrari, 2/10 faster than Mercedes, who are 2/10 faster than Red Bull. I wouldn't mind that. I mean, of course, I'd love them all to be equal, literally on pace, but that's a lot better than it was last season, because at times Red Bull were quite a bit off at some races in 2018. Mario Master, I still think Gasly is going to be the surprise of the season, not beating Max, but as he gets experience, I really think he has potential. I want him to prove me wrong in 2019. I want him to prove me wrong because I'm not sold on the guy. I don't think he is quite maybe as good as some people think. I'm not convinced massively by the guy. So I'm hoping he does prove me wrong. Find more comments. Alam, does Honda have a party mode? Yes, they do, but it's not as powerful as, say, the Mercedes or the Ferrari one. F1 review time: Ferrari 3/10 up, the Merc 2/10 up on Red Bull, and then a 4 to 5/10 gap to Alfa, Renault, Racing Point, Haas, McLaren, Toro Rosso. Yeah, that sounds about right. The gap, say, to Red Bull to the midfield. The random guy, Red Bull 1 second off the pace in Monza quali. Let's hope for them to be closer. If they're a quarter of a second closer in qualifying, I'd be happy enough with that. I'm not asking for them to be, half a second better in qualifying, but if they're a quarter of a second better, that'd be enough for me, because at some races, they may end up on the second row and be looking good. But I think we'll now move on from the top teams and go on to the midfield. And start off with Renault, who of course have acquired Daniel Ricciardo for their team. Testing went well, but it didn't go maybe as well as maybe we were expecting, or they were expecting, or Renault fans were expecting, but it did go, I think, well enough. And I think this season, what they need to really do is really, nail down P4 in the constructors in a more comfortable way than they did in 2018, because in 2018 they didn't have the fastest car in the midfield. Fastest car in the midfield was the Haas. Pace-wise, Haas should have got it, but they didn't because they bottled it. What Renault need to do this season is consolidate that position a lot more than they did in 2018 and be a lot more comfortable in that position. They're going to have a tough fight against teams like Alfa Romeo and Haas, for example, and maybe other teams like McLaren or Racing Point. But I think Renault should really be more comfortable in P4 in the Constructors' Championship. I think the drivers are going to do a good job. I think Ricciardo is going to be very good this season because he's going to have to push very, very hard, especially in, say, the races, to really get the best out of this Renault car. So I'm expecting a good season for Daniel Ricciardo, hopefully for Nico Hülkenberg as well. But Nib, for Renault, do you think Renault, can they be closer to the top teams, do you think? Or do you think they're going to be basically, maybe not pace-wise the same as last season, but then compared to the top teams, they're going to be, again, nowhere near? How do you think they're going to be compared to, say, Red Bull, Ferrari, and Mercedes?
Well, I do think that Renault have closed the gap to the top teams, but I think everyone has. I think everyone, except for Williams, has closed the gap to the top three. I think that was pretty clear in testing, where most of the midfield runners were about half a second to a second off the top teams in their race runs. So with Renault, they absolutely have to achieve a comfortable fourth uh, this year. There's no doubt about it. You know, it was a big achievement for them getting fourth in the championship next year, and this year has to go right for them. But I think there is a lot of pressure on Nico Hulkenberg this year. Cyril Abitbol, or Squirrel Irritable, as Christian Horner would call him. Um, he's under pressure, and Cyril has made it very clear already from the first press conference. If Hulkenberg doesn't deliver this season, he will be out of the team. And there's already been some little rumors linking Fernando Alonso to that Renault seat for 2020. So it's going to be quite an important year for Hulkenberg. He's going to have to challenge Ricardo on a regular basis, and if he doesn't, by the sounds of it, he could be out of Renault, which is quite remarkable, and quite remarkable for that much pressure to be put on Hulkenberg without a lap being turned yet so far this season. So it's quite interesting. That is, but the car looks a lot better in terms of in terms of how complex it is in the barge board area. That looks a lot better than last year. The car looks better than last year. That's really the key here. So we haven't really seen too many performance runs. Obviously, we've seen them run, some very quick lap times towards the end of the first week, but come the second week when everyone was really ramping it up, we didn't really see Renault ramp it up too much. So it'll be interesting to see where they are in the competitive order uh, come qualifying on Saturday afternoon in Australia. But yeah, Renault absolutely have to get fourth this season.
Sorry, my mic was muted then. I will say, Daniel Ricciardo and Fernando Alonso at Renault. Please, please make that happen. That would be a dream to see that. Yeah, that'd be amazing. I haven't actually seen any rumors about Alonso to Renault, but that's interesting. But yeah, that's a dream. Maybe for another time. But yeah, Renault, just make sure you get fourth in a more comfortable way. And yeah, I think they need to have a better season than 2018. 2018 wasn't a bad season, but they didn't have really a quick enough car to get fourth. They never really had the fourth best car at any real race in 2018. The only races I can remember was Canada, where they had the fourth best car, and I think as well,
Baku.
Yeah, Baku. Yeah, they need to be a lot more on the fourth row of the grid. I think Ricardo will get that out of the car. Yeah, I think they need to be a bit better pace wise if they're going to finish P4 in the constructors, because if they are again, say P5 in terms of pace, then if the midfield is even stronger this season, they may miss out on P4, which is, if they didn't finish fourth, that would be a massively terrible season for Renault. Absolutely. Anyway, let's go on to McLaren, who last season had a terrible season. Yes, they finished P6 in the constructors, but pace-wise, this McLaren was absolutely terrible, and they have to improve for 2019. And I think so far they have improved, not massively. Can't massively tell the pace difference, say, between now and the end of last year. They're not massively quicker than they were at the end of last season. But McLaren cannot afford to have what they had for the majority of the second half or the most of 2018, where they're getting knocked out in Q1. They have no pace, the aerodynamics, chassis, or straight line speed. They've got to improve. And I really hope, and I know I've criticised McLaren so much over the last year, but they have to improve. They have to. As long as they improve this season, that's good enough for me. As long as they improve, that is enough. You don't have to, jump up to best of the midfield, because they're not going to be. But as long as they improve pace of the car and maybe the constructor's position, but I don't think they really will. I think the reason they got that was because Fernando Alonso had so many great performances in 2018 in what was a terrible car. But if they improve this car pace-wise, say to P7 or P8 in the pecking order, that is enough for me for McLaren in terms of them improving into 2020s and beyond. Yeah, hopefully McLaren do improve. But Nib, for McLaren, what do you think what could make this a successful season for McLaren? Would it be top 5 in the constructors, or as I said, just improving on the absolute dog of a car they had in 2018?
Well, that's a remarkable thing because they finished in what was it? Did they finish 6th in the constructors last year? I believe they did so. So I think if they improve on that position, that would be an overachievement. If I'm going to be honest, because they were certainly nowhere near the 6th fastest team for the majority of that season. Only at the start of the season where they really got some strong results was where they were able to finish P6, and of course when what's it called? When Racing Point had their points reset, that's really the reason why they finished 6th. So, but with McLaren, I don't think they are as strong as the testing really um, shows. You know, in on days 5 and 6, I think they were fastest on both of those days, and I don't think that is the true performance of the McLaren. I think they are in the bottom half of the midfield. I don't see them challenging with the likes of Renault, Haas, and in Alfa Romeo. I nearly said Sauber. Um, so I think the big thing is going to be the battle between Norris and Sainz. It's really interesting. You know, Sainz had a little bit of a disappointing season at Renault, and then of course Ricciardo took his seat, so he had no chance there. So he's going to have a point to prove to Renault. You know, to say you shouldn't have dropped me for Daniel Ricciardo. You know, you should have maybe kept me. And for Lando Norris, I've seen some people question how quick he is. I think he's a quick driver. I think he will do well, but I've seen some people question it, and I think he will have a point to prove already because he is very, very hyped up, is Lando Norris, and the pressure will be on in that sense, but I'm sure he will have a massive point to prove when it comes to his debut in Melbourne in a couple of days' time now. But I do think McLaren, compared to where they were, which was second last for the most of the latter stages of the season, I think they will be improving on that, and they won't be at rock bottom like they were last season. I only see them going up from now, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I think they'll be better than they were last season, but I don't think massive. I think pace-wise, they're probably going to be at the absolute best in the pecking order, say 7th fastest in the season. I don't think they'll ever get into, say, 5th, 6th. I think the best they can hope for is, say, P7. But yeah, McLaren, look, as long as they improve, that's all that matters. We're not asking for them to finish at the top of the midfield or win races or get on the podium. Just improve on 2018. Because if they do improve and, are not massively confident, but quietly confident going forward, then 2020 should be an improvement again, because they're not going to get rid of Renault in terms of an engine supplier, and they're going to know the Renault power unit better. Andres Seidel and James Key are going to have more experience in the team. So as long as this season is an improvement pace-wise on last season, then they can make some solid progress going forward into the 2020s. And I'm hoping McLaren do progress. I know people think I hate McLaren. I don't. The reason I criticise McLaren is because I want them desperately to be at the front of the grid. They deserve to be. It is so graceful that they find themselves so poor pace-wise. And they've got to slowly but surely start getting back to that position on the grid. They absolutely have to. But moving on to Alfa Romeo, who I think had the best testing out of any of the midfield teams. I don't think they were massively better than any of the midfield teams in testing, but in terms of the look of their car on track, their car to me does look like the best car in the midfield, just over teams like Renault and Haas. And I think they are looking very good. And from the moment we really saw the Alfa Romeo when it did its shakedown at the Ferrari test track, this car has just looked very, very good. I think it is going to be a good midfield car. Can they get a podium? Maybe, if the conditions are right. And when I mean conditions, you know, the amount of retirements there's been and weather conditions and the type of track it is. Maybe they can if they get the right sort of luck, or if their car is very, very good at a certain track for some reason. Maybe they can get a podium. I also think that with Renault, maybe they can get a podium if the conditions for that are just right. But I think Alfa Romeo are going to be fighting at the front of the midfield for basically the entire season, with teams like Renault, probably Haas a bit, but I think Haas are probably going to drop off a bit at points during 2019. But I think the battle in the midfield that we are going to most likely keep our eyes on is Renault versus Alfa Romeo. That is the battle I see for P4 in the constructors. And Nib, do you also think that Alfa Romeo are going to be right there with Renault at the front of the midfield?
I absolutely do agree with you right there. They had a fantastic preseason testing. They certainly look like they are towards the top of the midfield, challenging with Renault and Haas. And with the experience that they have and the quick and person who can just enjoy his driving again, I think Kimi Raikkonen will be very strong in this upcoming 2019 season. He's certainly going to be where he's certainly going to have to perform a lot, of course, with the rookie. Well, he's had two F1 races, but his first full season in the sport, Antonio Giovinazzi, he's going to be under a lot of pressure against such a experienced teammate. And you know, we've seen him in the sport twice, and he had two bad races. So, especially at China, where he binned it into the wall at the last corner when it was a little bit wet, I believe. So, you know, Giovinazzi will be under pressure, but fundamentally, Alfa Romeo have a good car, and they will be quick. You know, they won't be challenging, you know, the top three, I don't think. You know, but certainly these guys are my dark horses for this year. I think they will be very, very quick. Just a continuation going on from last year. You know, they had a very good car towards the end of last season, probably the fifth quickest or fourth quickest in some races with Charles Leclerc, especially at tracks like Brazil and that. So I think Alfa Romeo will have a good season. I don't think that they will beat Renault, which of course I've just spoiled my prediction, but you know, we'll touch on that a little bit later. But an important season for Alfa Romeo, just to consolidate and to see that the money that they have invested has been worth it.
Yeah, I think from the midfield, they are the absolute dark horse of the midfield. My personal dark horse out of all the teams is Red Bull, but out of the midfield, for me, it's definitely Alfa Romeo, because I think as the season goes on, they're going to improve as the season goes on, because yes, this team was Sauber, but now with the cash they do have, and Resta, Steiner, Frederick Vasseur, Kimi Raikkonen, who is so good at developing a car, they are going to develop over the season very well. And as Nib said, they are going to be a dark horse. No doubt about that. But now let's move on to the American team, Haas F1, who I think are going to be stronger than maybe we thought coming in. I think they are going to be fighting with Renault and Alfa Romeo at some races, maybe not every Grand Prix, but I think they are going to be strong. If those drivers, can not make silly errors and really get the pace out of the car and themselves, then they can at some races maybe finish at the front of the midfield. But because of the lack of money they do have compared to teams like Alfa and Renault, I don't think they can consistently put up a fight against those teams. But they're definitely going to be in that battle at quite a few races. Don't discount Haas. They are going to score points on plenty of occasions. And even if they finish lower in the constructors than they did in 2018, say P6 or P7, have to remember they've only been in F1 since 2016. So even if they do finish in P6, for example, that's not a bad season because they don't have a ton of cash and resources. So I think if they are, say, at, I don't know, 40% of the races in 2019 competitive with Renault and Alfa Romeo and finish 6 or P7 in the constructors, for me, that's a good enough season considering the size of this team. Nib, for Haas, where do you see them falling in that midfield battle? Do you think they are going to compete with Renault and Alfa, or do you think they'll fall back towards, I don't know, Toro Rosso or Racing Point?
I think at the start of the season, Haas will be there with Renault and Alfa Romeo. You know, there were signs in preseason testing once again that they have a very strong car. Some of the runs which people have discovered, especially Karen Shandok, of a run that Magnussen did on the C3 tyre, which was very quick and actually pretty close to the Ferrari and Mercedes. Of course, we don't know the fuel loads and what engine modes are running, but you know, I think Haas certainly have some promise. If wow, okay, interesting. Ultra, can you deal with that person in the chat? Thank you. Um, yeah. So what's going to happen is that I just think with the lack of money that they have and the amount of people and just the staff, they have only 220 staff, I believe. So I think in a season where the development is going to the development race is going to be on and in full swing, that they might struggle just to develop those parts of the cars. Um, you know, I do see that being a slight issue, but if they have just Roman Grosjean and Kevin Magnussen performing for the whole season, I think they will have a good season because if Roman Grosjean performed last year at the level which he can perform at, they would have finished fourth in the championship. Of course, unfortunately, they had that really unfortunate issue at Albert Park where both of the tyres didn't go on correctly and weren't tight. But you know, I think that they will do well, but I think they will fall back a little bit in the midfield battle.
As you said, if Roman Grosjean performs at the level we know he can, and we know he can perform at a good level, then they can have a good season. And I agree, if Grosjean performed how he normally does when he's good last season, I think Haas would have took P constructors. I'm just hoping that both drivers can, consistently be up there and not make silly errors. And hopefully they think before they do stuff. Because last year, some of the stuff these did was beyond crazy at times. Like Kevin Magnussen's move on Charles Leclerc at Suzuka, blocking him. Stuff like that. I really hope that, they don't go absolutely mental at times, because if Haas are actually better than we think and the drivers are a bit more consistent, you never know. Haas could finish in the top 5 in the constructors. We don't know how the season is going to literally go, of course. So, we'll see. But next up is Toro Rosso. Coming into this season, I really didn't care about Toro Rosso, to be honest, because seemed like they weren't really, not that they weren't bothering with this season, but they didn't really be really interesting for the season. Hold on, let me clear my throat a minute. I do have a bit of a cold, so sorry about that. But yeah, for Toro Rosso, after what I saw in testing, they're actually looking a bit better than I expected. I thought they were going to be one of those teams that kind of just drifts through a season, not really doing anything. Yeah, they'll get a points finish here or there, but they won't really do anything that surprising or massive. But with the pace they showed at times and with the way the car looked around the track, they could, at certain races like Monaco, they could end up getting a surprising points finish. Hopefully, Kvyat is not a torpedo 2019, and hopefully Alexander Albon performs as well as we know he can, because in F2 last season he was better than Lando Norris in my opinion, and was very good, and is also criminally underrated by people that watch F1 or are in the F1 world. But yeah, hopefully this team can um, can be a bit better than maybe we were expecting or hoping for this season. I don't think they're going to be insanely fast or insanely good, but it's looking a bit better than I thought it would be for Toro Rosso. Nib, do you have any thoughts regarding Toro Rosso's season? Do you think they can do anything great?
Well, I think that with a very strong Honda power unit, which it certainly looks like at the moment, and certainly one which looks a little bit more reliable than last season, I think that they can have a better season than last season. I do think that the midfield is going to be super, super close. So I don't think anyone in the midfield will be cut adrift from, say, Renault or Haas or Alfa Romeo. I don't think that the midfield will be, there'll be a massive gap in the midfield. I think everyone will be very close together. But it was very sorry, it was a very promising first winter test and second winter test from Toro Rosso. I think a lot better than most of us expected. I don't think they're quite as quick as their times indicate. I don't think they're up there challenging for the top of the midfield, but I was very impressed by Alexander Albon's performance in preseason testing, considering that was the first time he actually drove an F1 car. So, very impressive by him, and I think he will have a good season. And I do agree with you, he is certainly an underrated driver. I don't think he'll quite beat Kvyat, but who knows? It's F1. Something could happen. There could be a surprise, and Albon could be a very good driver. Well, he is a good driver, but he could outperform Kvyat, which I don't quite expect. So I think Toro Rosso won't be quite irrelevant as we thought that probably heading into preseason testing or as last season. So hopefully they do have a good season for their sake, indeed.
Yeah, I'm hoping. I'm hoping the drivers kind of prove people wrong, because they both have doubters. People still think that is rubbish, which he's not. I mean, Albon, again, very underrated. I've even seen people saying that he's the worst driver on the grid, which I disagree with. I think he will shock people as to how good he is. Charles Leclerc rates him massively. Other drivers in his generation, like George Russell, Lando Norris, they also rate him very highly. He's a good driver. He's a very good driver, and I don't think people should discount him, because he could really surprise this. I wouldn't be surprised if he got a P8 in a Grand Prix or something like that. I wouldn't be surprised. But let's move on from Toro Rosso and go on to Racing Point. Now, preseason testing was basically pointless for them, because it was revealed that they're going to have a massive new upgrade package for the Australian Grand Prix, and that's basically going to be their 2019 car. So testing was, again, kind of pointless for them, and it does leave them on the back foot compared to teams like Haas, Toro Rosso, McLaren, and Renault and Alfa Romeo. But I'm just thinking, what can they really get out of this season? I think first 6 races for this team, I think they are going to struggle. But I think once we get to, say, Canada, I think from Canada on, I think you will see this team really start to contend for points finishes, because I think this team, they do tend to develop the car very well over the course of a season. Sergio Perez is a very good driver. Lance Stroll not as much, but yeah, I think the first 5 or 6 races, I think this team's going to struggle. But after Canada, I think this team will really start to get up there with teams like Haas and McLaren for sure. I think they are going to be right there, but they're going to struggle quite a bit up until the Canadian Grand Prix. And hopefully, they don't have as troubled of a season as they did last season, when, of course, they became Racing Point instead of, well, they were still Force India, but they were basically Racing Point. Hopefully, they don't have a troubled season like that again. And kind of like McLaren, as long as they make progress, I think it's a good enough season. I'm not expecting them to be up there with Renault and Alfa Romeo, but as long as they make progress, that is good enough for me. Nib, for Racing Point, what for you? Also, I asked you basically the same thing with McLaren. What for you would make this season successful for Racing Point?
Well, because we haven't seen their proper 2019 car, I think it's very difficult to talk about Racing Point at this moment. We don't know where they really are, and of course, they don't really know where they are. Of course, from the simulations, they can kind of figure out where they are, but of course, they could have a correlation issue. So, like they did last year, in the early stages. So, we will see them struggle probably the first couple of races of the season as they come to grips with their car and, what they need to do with the setup. And I'm sure we'll see them doing a lot of running with their car when it comes to the first and second practice sessions in Melbourne. So with Force India, I think what a successful season would be, I don't really know. I don't know what a successful season would be for Racing Point. They, of course, now that they don't have to worry about money. Lawrence Stroll and the consortium that bought the team have supplied the team with enough money, to survive and to potentially thrive. I think they are a little bit they're going a little bit quiet into this season. I must say, I can't quite think of the word. They're going under the radar. Sorry, that's it. Coming into this season, there could be a little bit of a surprise, but it's just really hard to talk about them because we haven't seen their proper car yet.
Yes, indeed. And it was a bit deceiving at testing when I was watching second test, because their car didn't actually look that bad. But then you remember that it's basically a 2018 car, so it's not really gonna look bad. Yeah, I think it's gonna be a troubled start in terms of pace. I don't think in terms of background, the money, behind the scenes stuff. I think in terms of the pace of the car, it'll be a troubled start. But once again we get to Canada or the mid-summer around Silverstone, Hockenheim, I think they'll be just about okay. For me, a successful season for Racing Point would be, I don't know, P7 or up in the constructors. I think that'd be a successful season for them. I'm hoping they aren't miles off in Melbourne, even though they're going to be learning the new car. I'm hoping they're not miles off, but I think at best they're probably going to finish in, say, P7 in the constructors. Now, let's move on to everyone's favourite joke, Williams F1, the toothpaste team. And, well, this season is going to be their worst ever. If they score points, it will be because of luck and nothing else. They are not going to score points because of the pace of the car. That car is so far off the rest of the midfield. They're not going to develop as well as the other teams. They are basically Manor in 2015, and dare I say, HRT in any form that they were when they were a team. They are going to be terrible, and I feel sorry. The only people I feel sorry for are the drivers. And if you don't know, Paddy Lowe has left the team. which is good because I don't think he deserves to be at the team anymore. He's designed 2 terrible cars. But this team is on a death spiral. Just terrible. They're absolutely terrible. I'm not going to go deep into the issues about Williams right now because tomorrow's stream, the This Week in F1 special, is all about Williams, and I'm going to go in depth about their issues and how they can be solved and stuff like that. So I'm not going to talk about it massively, but Nib, for Williams, is there anything they're going to do in 2019 that's not going to be terrible?
No. They're going to be dead last. As I was joking the other day, they're going to be finishing 13th in the Constructors' Championship. They are going to be absolutely nowhere. I wouldn't even be surprised at some races that they might even struggle to make 107%. I honestly wouldn't be too surprised by it. You know, Kubica said that he only knows 20% of what he should know about the car. He seems fed up already, and poor George Russell, such an exciting talent, going into a team, you know, and he's just gonna have to put up with this crap. In all honesty, the drivers don't deserve this. Robert Kubica's comeback is probably going to be completely and utterly spoiled by this, unless unless there is some sort of miracle happen. It's going to be interesting. But I will touch just quite quickly on Paddy Lowe leaving. I think it was the right decision, and that is one out of the 2 people that should be leaving Williams. Claire Williams needs to go, as we have mentioned on this channel many, many times. She's not good at her job, and we've kind of seen, other team principals struggle in the past like this. Manisha Kaltenborn struggled, and then boom, Frederick Vasseur come in and look at what an amazing job he's done at Alfa Romeo. I'm not too sure who they could potentially get to become as team principal. Maybe Pat Fry to come back or something like that. I think they just need a breath of fresh air in that team. Someone who's not a Williams. It'd be great if Frank could still run the team, but he's not able to, of course. When Vijay Mallya couldn't run the team at Force India, and of course Racing Point, Otmar Safnar, who's done a fantastic job of that team over the past few seasons. I think they really do need to find someone. And I seen someone mention about what's it called, about this Netflix series. Of course, I've watched it. It's fantastic, and if you are hyped up for this season, you should certainly go and watch it. You will be hyped up even more by it. So, Williams were memed a lot in that series, and it's probably that's what they've already become this season with their livery design, but it's what they could become again with another horrific 2019 on the looks.
Also, I just want to say this and ask you about this. Have you seen that apparently Williams' car isn't even legal? That's amazing. They've got teams protesting their car about its legality, and they're that far off. Surely, if you're gonna cheat, you at least be good. You can't cheat and be crap. That's completely the opposite of what cheating is for. I mean, I'm not saying they're literally trying to cheat, but you know what I mean. You're going to put something on the car that's not legal, at least be good. Don't be even further behind than you were last season or where you should be. That is mind-boggling how you can have parts of the car that are not even legal and still be so bad. How is that even possible for this team? If this was HRT, for example, then you'd be like, well, they're an inexperienced team, very small team. What do you expect? They're terrible. This is Williams. Williams can't even have a fully legal car, and even these illegal parts, which you expect to make them better, have made them worse. How is that possible? Anyway, I'm gonna leave it till tomorrow.
Breathe, leave it for tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm gonna leave it till tomorrow. How? That is unbelievable.
I
It,
must say, I
no, go
wasn't
on.
aware of this. I wasn't aware of this, and yeah, this is quite shocking, and there's no wonder why Paddy Lowe has left the team.
Yeah. That even though Paddy Lowe has designed two terrible cars, he does also deserve a better team to work for than Williams. Williams aren't exactly in the best shape. Um, and I don't think the conditions at Williams, the working conditions, are exactly ideal. Um, but yeah, I can't believe Williams have become this bad. I knew they were going to drop down the order after 2014, but I didn't think it would get to this point where I'm even questioning whether they're actually going to make the 107% rule. There could be races like that. For example, I've seen it plenty of times at the Australian Grand Prix with other teams where they've failed to make the 107% rule. The last team to do it was HRT in 2012 and also 2011. It could happen again if their car is not properly ready. And after what I saw at testing, guys, I am telling you, they are so far off each Racing Point, and that Racing Point car isn't even the 2019 Racing Point car. They are so far off the pace, is not even funny. But I think now let's get into our predictions for the Drivers' Championship and also the Constructors' Championship. Now, I will make mine and then I'll let Nib make his for the drivers and then we'll go on to the constructors and do the same again. Make sure you guys put in your prediction for top 10 in the drivers and the constructors. And once we get done with ours, I will try to read out as many as I possibly can before we go on to the Q&A part of this stream. The Q&A is not going to be massively long, maybe 10 most. So I think now, let's get into those predictions. And I'm going to start off with mine for the Drivers' Championship. And these might be a bit controversial with a couple drivers, maybe even more than that. So, in my opinion, winning the Drivers' Championship will be in a closer fight than it was in 2017. Will be just Lewis Hamilton. Then in second place will be Charles Leclerc. Then in third will be Sebastian Vettel. But I must stress, I think the top three in the championship is going to be very, very close during the season up until the end of the season. In fourth will be Max Verstappen. Fifth will be Bottas. And sixth will be Gasly. And then seventh will be Daniel Ricciardo. Eighth will be Kimi Raikkonen. Ninth, this is a bit of a wild card, but I'm going Romain Grosjean in P9 in the drivers. And then in 10th, Nico Hulkenberg. Now, Nib, what is your top 10 of the drivers for 2019?
Well, we aren't too dissimilar in our drivers that we have selected. Of course, the order is a little bit different, but winning the World Championship, in my opinion, sticking with my early season prediction, it is going to be Sebastian Vettel. He has a point to prove, and I think he will do it in a Ferrari, which looks very quick at the moment. In second place, you have to put Lewis Hamilton if you're not putting him first. He's the best driver on the grid, and we've seen just how good he is over the past few seasons. So I think Hamilton will finish second. In third, I'm going to put Charles Leclerc. His first season at Ferrari, I don't think um, that his time is quite right. I don't think we will see the best of Charles at the moment. And Ferrari, I think he will only get stronger and stronger and better at the Scuderia. In fourth place, I've got Max Verstappen, but I think if Red Bull are quick again, like they were towards the end of last season, I do think he will be challenging those guys ahead. Very much so. In fifth place, I'm going to put Valtteri Bottas. This might seem harsh for a few of you. You know, he could have been leading the world championship. Well, should have been leading the world championship after the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. So I think Bottas will finish fifth. He is quick around some tracks, but just not quick enough for the whole season. In sixth, I'm going Pierre Gasly. Now, I've been okay. I must admit, I've been harsh saying that I think he will get out qualified by Max at every race. I don't think he will be. He'll be close to Max, really, I don't think he'll be as far away as I maybe predicted. I think he is a good driver, but he certainly needs to bounce back after the poor pre-season testing he's had. In seventh, no surprises, going Daniel Ricciardo. I think Renault will have the fourth quickest car, and I think Ricciardo will finish P7. Pretty simple there. In eighth, I've also gone for Kimi Raikkonen. I think the Alfa Romeo is looking very strong at the moment, and Kimi is still a quick driver, perhaps from what we've seen last year, that he still certainly has that available to him. So I think the Kim stuff will finish eighth. In ninth, I have Nico Hulkenberg. I think he had a good season last year. Was the main reason why Renault got fourth in the constructors with some brilliant drives, especially at the United States Grand Prix, finishing just ahead of Kevin Magnussen. So I think that Hulkenberg will do a good enough performance to keep his seat for 2020, and I think he will finish in ninth. And for the 10th spot in the Drivers' Championship, I've gone for Kevin Magnussen. He had a very good season last year, and I think he will just go from strength to strength in this upcoming season. So that is my top 10 in the drivers. And of course, guys, in the chat, keep your comments and your top 10 flowing.
Yeah, before we go on to the constructors prediction, I'm going to read out all of the drivers' predictions in the chat right now. But before I do, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this, as next weekend I will be covering the 2019 Australian Grand Prix. Plenty of content, review, preview, watch alongs, all of that stuff. Don't forget to subscribe. Bottom right of the screen, you can do it right there, or click on my channel name, go to the channel page, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell for more content like this. But let's now read through the chat, and also make sure to do this in the comment section as well. Let's see what you guys think in terms of what you think is going to happen in 2019 in the Drivers' Championship. Mario Master, his top 10 is Vettel, Hamilton, Leclerc, Verstappen, Bottas, Gasly, Ricciardo, Raikkonen, Hulkenberg, and Grosjean. So he has the same the same 10 drivers in the top 10 as me, but in a different order. Legio, Vettel, Leclerc in 1 and 2. So he thinks Ferrari are going to be fifth this season. Hamilton third, Verstappen fourth, Bottas fifth, Ricciardo in sixth. Wow. And then Gasly seventh, Giovinazzi eighth. And then Hulkenberg, Raikkonen, Magnussen, Grosjean, and Perez. Wischwader, Vettel, Grosjean, Hulkenberg. F1 review time. Hamilton, then Vettel, Leclerc, Verstappen, Bottas, Gasly, Ricciardo, Hulkenberg, Kimi. And then he says, could be anybody like Magnussen, Grosjean, Giovinazzi, Perez, and Norris. It is very close in that midfield, no doubt about it. Or Mario Master, that's his constructors. We'll get onto that in a moment. Motorsport Tube says Leclerc to win the Drivers' Championship, then Hamilton, then Verstappen, then Vettel. So that's a bit controversial, but of course, opinion. Fifth is Bottas, sixth is Gasly, then Ricciardo, Hulkenberg, Raikkonen, Grosjean. Sebastian says Vettel to win, Hamilton, Leclerc third, Verstappen fourth, Bottas fifth, Gasly sixth, Ricciardo seventh, Hulkenberg eighth, Grosjean ninth, and Kimi in 10th. So he doesn't quite rate Alpha's chances. Erudite, Hamilton to win the championship in his opinion. Vettel second, Verstappen third, Leclerc fourth, Bottas fifth, Gasly sixth, Ricciardo seventh, Grosjean eighth, Hulkenberg ninth, and Kimi Raikkonen in 10th. One thing I am noticing is everyone, I think, is going for Bottas fifth and Gasly in sixth, because I don't think they have enough in themselves to really finish any higher. Caleb says, why not 11? Why are you not going from 11 place down? The reason is because I don't really care about the bottom 10 of the drivers, because they don't really mean anything. I think the top 10 of the drivers championship is care about. JB, Vettel, Leclerc, Hamilton, Verstappen, Bottas, Gasly, Ricciardo, Hulkenberg, Raikkonen, and Sainz. First person to go for Sainz. Daniel Crawford says Hamilton, then Verstappen, Leclerc, Bottas, Gasly, and Vettel. Definitely not a Vettel fan. Fish Lips, Verstappen, championship. That's surprising. From Vettel, Hamilton third, Leclerc fourth. De Rugara, Hamilton, Leclerc, Vettel, Verstappen, Bottas, Gasly, Ricciardo, Raikkonen, Grosjean, Hulkenberg. Spider Monkey says Hamilton, Vettel, Verstappen, Leclerc, Bottas, Gasly, Ricciardo, Perez. That's surprising. Then Hulkenberg, Magnussen, Roll, and Grosjean. Very interesting prediction.
Interesting.
There. Yeah, it is very interesting. Also, the reason I'm reading these out is not only to see what you guys think, but also so you guys come back to the stream knowing what your prediction was. So at the end of the season, we know, what your top 10 was, and we also know what our top 10 was, so we can look back on it and see whether we were right or wrong. Ultraman says Vettel, Verstappen, Hamilton, Leclerc, Bottas, Gasly, Ricciardo, Raikkonen, Hulkenberg, Magnussen. I've noticed as well a lot of people going for Ricciardo in P7 in the drivers. I think that is enough of the drivers' predictions. If you want to keep putting more in, then go ahead and do so, and also do so in the comments section as well. But now, let me get on to the constructors' predictions. Now, these are mine. So I think Ferrari will win the Constructors' Championship. The reason I think that is because I think the car will be too good not to win the Constructors. And with the drivers they have, I think they will win the Constructors. Mercedes will be second, Red Bull third. Renault will take fourth in the Constructors because I think they will have very good race pace, which beat Alfa Romeo plenty of times. And also, I think they will develop well over the season. Then fifth, in my opinion, will be Alfa. Sixth will be Haas. I am going McLaren P7. The reason I'm going for that is because I think Racing Point will lose out on a lot of points in the first 6 or 7 races, and I don't think Toro Rosso are going to develop well over the season. So I think McLaren will take P7 in the Constructors. Then Racing Point, I think, will be 8th. Then 9th is Toro Rosso. And then, of course, Williams 10th or 13th. But there you go. There is my Constructors' predictions. Now, Nib, what are yours for the Constructors?
Okay, I don't think there is much of a surprise here after their, brilliant performance so far in preseason testing. Of course, it is only preseason testing, but at the moment, I'm going Ferrari in first to win the Constructors' title for the first time since 2008. In second, I'm going for Mercedes. I think they will still be close to Ferrari throughout the season, but I do think they will just miss out on that Constructors' Championship. I think Red Bull will be in third. I think Max will be quick, but I don't think they'll be picking up the high playing points positions as often with their second driver in Pierre Gasly. In fourth, I'm going to go with Renault. I think they have a very good driver lineup. In my opinion, probably the third or fourth best on the grid. So I think with that in mind, that they will finish in fourth. And then in fifth, I've got Alfa Romeo. With the Kim Star and with how good the car is looking at the moment, and with Simone Resta and with Frederick Vasseur, who has done a fantastic job at that team, I think they will finish in fifth. For sixth, I'm going with Haas. I think even though the team won't have as many blunders as they did last year, and I think Grosjean will perform well, I don't see them being as quick as Alfa and Renault for the whole season. So that is why they are in sixth. And it's very close between Racing Point, McLaren, and Toro Rosso, but I am going in that order. Racing Point, in my opinion, will finish seventh. I think their car will be a good car once they understand it. So I think they will finish in P7. In eighth, I've got McLaren. I think they will improve on last year. Of course, not in the Constructors' Championship standings, but certainly where their car was for the second half of the season. I think McLaren will have a positive 2019, of course, with James Key and Andreas Seidel coming into the team after a couple of months into the season. Then in ninth, I've got Toro Rosso, and I think this is really harsh on Toro Rosso because they've had a really good preseason, and they look strong with a good and reliable engine. So I think that they're going to be a little bit unlucky to get P9. And in 13th, we have Williams because they're going to be absolutely nowhere.
Yep. So there you go. So the only difference was what, McLaren and Racing Point, and I think that is um, a, a very understandable prediction in the constructors. I don't think there'll be massive differences in predictions because we know pretty much what the pecking order is and who's in what fight. So yeah, I think that's prediction for both of us. But let me now see what you guys think in the chat about your predictions for the constructors. So I'll put them in the chat right now, and I'll read out as many as I can. So Sergio says Ferrari first, then Mercedes and Red Bull, Alfa Romeo, Renault, Haas, Racing Point, McLaren, Toro Rosso, and Williams. So he's gone for the same one. Nib. Wishwader says Mercedes, then Red Bull, then Ferrari, then Renault, McLaren, Alfa, Haas, Toro Rosso, Racing Point, Williams. Very surprising prediction. Erudite says Ferrari first, then Mercedes, Red Bull, Renault, Haas, Alfa Romeo, Racing Point, Toro Rosso, McLaren, and Williams. Mario Master says Ferrari, Mercedes, Red Bull, Renault, Alfa, Haas, Racing Point, McLaren, Toro Rosso, and Williams. So that's again the same nib. Bastian says Ferrari, Mercedes, Red Bull, Renault, Haas, Alfa Romeo, Racing Point, McLaren, Toro Rosso, and Toothpaste. Motorsport Tube says Ferrari, then Mercedes, then Red Bull, then Renault, Alfa, Haas, P7, Daddy's Disgrace, then P8 is McLaren, P9 Toro Rosso, and 10th Williams. Spider Monkey, Ferrari, Mercedes, Red Bull, Renault, Racing Point in 5th. I know he is a bit of a race. Understandable. Then Haas, Alfa, McLaren, Toro Rosso, and Williams. And then puts Williams at the end of the 2 games. Caleb says Ferrari, Mercedes, Red Bull, Alfa, Renault, Haas, Racing Point, McLaren, Toro Rosso, and Colgate. Ultraman says Ferrari, Mercedes, Red Bull, Alfa Romeo, Renault, Haas, McLaren, Toro Rosso, Racing Point, Williams. What else have we got? Erugara. I'll probably do this final constructors prediction, then we'll go on to the Q&A. Erugara says Ferrari to win the constructors, Mercedes second, Red Bull third, Renault fourth, Alfa fifth, Haas sixth, McLaren seventh, Racing Point eighth, Toro Rosso ninth, and Williams in 10th. But now, guys, for the final, say, 10 minutes, I will do a bit of a Q&A, and then we'll come to the end of today's podcast. It's been a very good one. Yeah, let's now get into the Q&A. So, guys, make sure in the next 10 minutes to load up the chat with as many questions as possible, and I'll try to get through as many as I can. I'll try to read the best ones that I can find. And yeah, we'll do that for the next 10 minutes, and then we'll podcast. And also, I just want to say this. In regards to the next episode of the podcast, I don't quite know what's going to happen because I haven't quite decided if we're going to do, like last season, what we did was a post-race podcast. I don't know yet if I'm going to do that or not. I'll have to see where I'd want to schedule it because, of course, the weekend after Melbourne, we are going to be doing a podcast that Saturday. So Saturday, the 23rd of March, I will be doing one then. I might, though, be doing one on, I don't know, the Tuesday after the Australian Grand Prix with Nib, talking out the race because of going to the race. So I'm not sure when the next episode of the podcast is exactly going to be. but I will announce that probably during the Australian Grand Prix weekend. Right, let's get into some. Mr. Random Guy, what do you think of Ted Kravitz supposedly doing 14 out of the 21 races this season? I have seen that. Yeah, this is a very disappointing story. So apparently, Ted is only doing 14 of the 21 races, and also apparently there is no more Ted's notebook. That is terrible. Now,
oh, come on.
Apparently, there is a new man at the head of Sky F1, and he doesn't really like Ted Kravitz. I think what's maybe happened is, I think maybe Ted wasn't sacked, but maybe they were planning to get rid of him, and then they saw the reception he was getting on Twitter, and they were like, right, let's not have a PR disaster. Let's give in and have Ted on program. But I think the person who runs Sky F1 doesn't like Ted Kravitz, so that's why they're taking that away, and it is disgraceful. I think what Ted should do is, well, he has a YouTube channel. If you guys don't know, if you put in Ted Kravitz on Twitter and try to find channel named Ted Kravitz, he actually does have one, because in 2016 he uploaded a video analysing the 2016 Renault car. It was in January 2016 or something like that. He does have a channel. If Ted is on the way out of Sky F1, which I think he probably is, I wouldn't mind him transitioning over to that, because especially for the notebook, I think that would go over so popular. Because if you look at the views his notebooks get that are re-uploaded to YouTube, look at the views they get. They are mental for something that isn't that a radical of an idea. It's just, he is such a great reporter. So I think he should honestly just try to transition into YouTube like Mark Priestley has. I think he should do that. But Nick,
I just want to have my say on
yeah,
this. Yeah, because of course in Australia with the pay TV we get Sky Sports coverage, and I've grown up watching Ted Kravitz reporting live from the pit lane. Doing the notebooks. That's what I would do every single on with, of course, with the media on the Thursday, and then the post race notebook. I'd watch Will Buxton and Ted Kravitz do their sort of recap of the races, and them interviewing the drivers. Of course, that was when Will Buxton was still with NBC, and of course now he's with F1, and I'll of course still watch that now. But hearing that there will be no Ted's notebook is very disappointing. It's man, I'm really bummed about that, because I think everyone loves Ted. He's such a character, and saying that he's only going to be doing 14 out of the 21 races is disappointing. Of course, it's better than him doing none, which it certainly looked like that for the. It looked like that was going to be the case, but that it's just disappointing. And hopefully, Ted can find a job somewhere else from Sky, from next year.
yeah, it is disappointing. Watching the notebooks, I could sit and watch them for hours. They're just so interesting. I think people outside of F1 won't really get why we say that, but if you're in F1 and you watch his notebooks, you understand what I mean. It's so interesting and so sometimes very funny. He is a bit of a cringeworthy person, but the thing I like about him is he kind of plays himself into those situations. Like, I can't remember where it was. I think it was in 2018.
That's what makes him great.
Yeah, that's what makes him great. But do you remember, was there one with Nico Rosberg where he walked up to him? It was so funny. The cringe. It was so funny. I can't remember where it was.
There are many times where he's done this. He walked up to Victoria Azarenka, who's like one of the best female tennis players in the world. He's like, "Oh, hello there, Victoria Azarenka. How are you doing?" And then like helped. It was so awkward. Then he like helped her find her way around Monaco. He just does that. It's so awkward, but it's so hilarious because he does embrace it.
Yeah, he's such a good guy. And I don't understand. What they're doing is they are giving Karun Chandhok more of a role. I think, like analysis team. They shouldn't. Ted Kravitz should have all of the goodies. You know what I mean? That he gets. The notebook, not only the race one, but the qualifying one. I think he did a bit of the Thursday press conference one as well. But he should have Thursday press conference, qualifying notebook, race notebook. Was it development corner? That's another one.
Yep.
He has on Sky F1. The thing he does where he sits at the end of the pit lane before the cars, or the cars just go out. He should have all of that, but it seems to me he's not having that quite as much, and maybe they are trying to replace him with Karun Chandhok doing the same thing. But I'm going to tell you now, I don't think Karun Chandhok's that bad. I actually think he's quite good, but he is not Ted Kravitz. He is not Ted Kravitz. Ted is definitely better in that pit lane role, no doubt about it. Okay, move on from that. Random guy opinions on the rest of the Sky team. Lazenby, I don't like him. I don't like him. Crofty, I cannot stand the guy. I like Brundle, not as much as I used to, but I like Brundle. I don't like, I don't like Johnny Herbert. I don't like him at all. I understand why people find him funny, but to me, it's like he's trying to be funny all of the time when, like, sometimes you have to be a bit more serious, and he just comes across as like a comedy character, not an actual analyst of F1. I'm not saying don't be funny. There are definitely times to be funny. But to me, he's like the joke in the team, if you know what I mean. He's the person that everyone laughs at or laughs with. I just think he's a bit silly. Damon Hill is all right. Anthony Davidson comes across as a bit forced sometimes, even though he made that really funny comment at the end of last season in regards to Fernando Alonso when I think was it Rachel Brooks asked something about, I don't know, parting gift, and he said, yeah, I gave him my Toyota in WEC or something like that. That was probably the funniest thing from Sky F1 in 2018, and that was in Abu Dhabi, I think.
I do remember that.
But what else you got? Yeah, Rachel Brooks is all right. Craig Slater is weird, but he's always been weird. If you've ever watched Sky Sports News in England, he's always been like that. That's not a new thing. He's always been awkward like that. Who else have you got? So I like DeResta a lot. I think he's very, very good. Very good. I think
just don't commentate.
He's not bad, but nowhere near Brundle. But he's not bad. I've heard a lot worse. He's not Jonathan Palmer bad that way. But what else have you got? See him, Karun Chandhok. I actually like quite a bit, but I don't think he is as good as Ted Kravitz. Who else is there? Else?
I think we covered everyone. Hill, Herbert, Brundle, Crofty, Chandhok, Slater, Lazenby, Rachel Brooks.
Oh,
I think
Natalie
we covered everyone.
Pinkham, that's another one.
Oh,
But
Pinkham.
she doesn't really go to the races as much anymore, but she's good.
She's a legend.
Yeah, she's a good reporter. Who else? Sometimes they used to have who was it? Bruno Senna. They used to have, who I thought was pretty good. Other stuff. Yeah, I think that is the Sky F1 team. They're not the best presenting team that's ever been for the UK coverage of F1. The best presenting team for UK coverage of Formula One, without a doubt, is BBC F1 from 2009 to 2011. Jake Humphrey, Coulthard, Brundle, Jordan, Lee Mackenzie. They were so good, and they were a lot.
Kravitz.
Yeah, Kravitz as well. They were a lot smaller of a team compared to the Sky F1 team. They were so good. If they were behind a paywall, I would understand, because the content they put out was so good. Kind of would be good to sell that, but with Sky F1, there's not that many people in their team that's actually that great. But yeah, the BBC F1, fantastic. Oh yeah, and also now you have Nico Rosberg, who I'm kind of 50-50 on. I don't think he's that great, but he's not. I've seen worse. and Jensen Button, who has fallen into the role that he was trying desperately not to fall into, but it came back to haunt him. It was always meant for him to get. There was no way he was never going to be a presenter or a commentator. It was always going to catch up to him. And finally, it has caught up to him. But yeah, that's the Sky F1 team for you. Right, I think now we should read out some more comments. Wishwader, if Lewis is tipped for the drivers but Ferrari is tipped for the constructors, does that mean Bottas needs to be placed? If the Mercedes car was better, then I'd probably say Mercedes for the constructors as well, but I'm saying that based on also the pace of the car. So, no, I wouldn't say that. But also one thing that we need to talk about is this point for fastest lap thing that I've seen come out. Now, I'm going to say it. I think they've come out and said that it is only for the people who finish in the top 10. So if you get the fastest lap and you finish in the top 10, then you get an extra point. I don't care what people say. It's a dumb idea. It should not be pushed through. It doesn't make the show any better or any worse. It's just another pointless change or idea that has come through. It's like the grid girls. Like, getting rid of them or keeping them makes no difference to the show. Why are they adding a point for a fastest lap when it is going to make no difference to the show? It's not going to make a difference. It's actually going to make us very angry at the end of the season if Lewis Hamilton wins the championship by a point because he, did from P5 when he's about a minute behind P4. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous. I don't get it. And I'm going to say this. I'm starting to dislike Liberty because they seem to me to care about things more that don't matter. Like, you've got this 2021 rule thing coming this season where they have to actually announce the rules by the 30th of June, and they don't really seem to be any closer to making any deals. They look like they're concentrating on things that don't matter, like this what's it, fastest remix of all time. Who cares? Focus on 2021. If you want to make 2021 the new era of Formula 1, why aren't you focusing on that instead of the fastest remix of all time, the dog driving an F1 car, or a point for a fastest lap, or getting rid of grid girls and stuff like that? I don't get it. Stop focusing on the little stuff. Focus on things that are actually going to make a difference to the show, not things that we don't really care about. They're not going to improve it or make it worse. They're just there. I don't understand it. Nib, what do you think about a point for a fastest lap?
It's dumb. It's a pointless point to give to the drivers. You said that before, and I finished it off for you just now. But it's ridiculous. I think you pretty much summed it up perfectly. That if Hamilton wins the championship by a point, or any driver for that fact wins the championship by a point because they've pitted from fifth because they're 1 trillion million seconds behind. Okay, maybe 30 seconds behind the car ahead, and they've got a massive gap to the cars behind, and they just pit, and then they're going to get a point for doing that up. It's pointless, it's ridiculous, and it looks like it's going to be pushed through ahead of the Australian Grand Prix from all reports. It might be only the top 10, and this is going to be their way of saying, oh, this is just so that teams in the midfield, who are last, they're not just going to keep on pitting, but the big teams will do it. You're just allowing the smaller teams not to do it. The big teams are going to do it if they're presented with the opportunity. It's ridiculous what they've done with this, and I really hope there's some common sense, that common sense prevails, and that this doesn't happen. It's probably the worst rule change idea that they've come up with since they changed the qualifying method back when it was like the the elimination qualifying style, to lighten up the show. The last time we heard that, that was a disaster. So hopefully there is some common sense in the next couple of days, and this is not pushed ahead as a rule because it is horrific.
But it's like I said, and you said as well, if you pit, from P4 or 5 and you're way beyond. Look what Valtteri Bottas did in Abu Dhabi. I think he had like some kind of tyre issue, but he pitted for an extra time and did the fastest lap. He also did the same thing in Brazil 2018. And I think if that rule applied last year, Bottas would have finished in 3 in the drivers. Maybe would have finished 4 instead of 5. I think that is the difference in that. What's going to happen is if the race winner is half a minute ahead of the guy in second, what they're going to do is get the gap, pit, do a fastest lap, get the extra point, and then you're just going to have the last 10 laps people pitting 2 or 3 times more because they want 1 more point. That's all it's going to be. And also, I just want to ask, because I've never asked you this, when that new qualifying came out for the first race in Australia, can I ask, when you were there, and I see, how confused were you? How confused was everyone else? Were you near a TV screen, or did that just make it more confusing?
I was there indeed, and there was just confusion, even with like the trackside commentators that you have through the little microphones that are attached to the fence. They didn't know what was going on. The crowd didn't know what was going on. It was just ridiculous. And don't change it if it ain't broke. And there's nothing wrong with this point scoring system. Since they've moved to the MotoGP style of point scoring, from the 10, 8, 7, 6 that we used to have, it's been very, very good. There's no need to change anything in terms of the point system. It's just ridiculous. It's just ridiculous.
I'll tell you one thing. Double points is another thing that was ridiculous. They
Okay,
got
yep.
so lucky that didn't have an effect. They got very lucky that did not have an effect on that championship. Could have, but they were very lucky that they could scrap it and it didn't have an effect on the title fight that season between Hamilton and Rosberg. But yeah, we've had some terrible rule changes the last couple seasons to do with those kind of things. Random guy, what was that dog driving the F1 car about? If you don't know what that's about, then go to the F1 Twitter because they're posting it about every about that. When there's more important things at play. And I've seen an article on racefans.net, and it was an article about I think one of the reporters was asking anonymous medical principals who work for the teams, and the people at the teams or the team principals kind of getting a bit worried about Liberty's lack of concrete talking about 2021. They were kind of more interested in talking about other stuff that didn't matter, or they couldn't hash out deals. So don't be surprised. And actually, I'm going to just say it now. I don't think what they want for 2021 is going to happen at all. I think it's going to be a disaster. I think for 2021 we're going to have a 2019-esque regulation change. That's what I think we're going to have. It's not going to be a massive one. Yeah, they'll make maybe small progress on budgets and stuff like that, but they're not going to. 2021 is not going to be as big as you think. Liberty are not hashing out the deals with the teams, quickly enough, and also they seem to be a bit weak at the minute in terms of their position against the teams and push these rules through. Right. Mr. Random Guy says, I know it's the fastest remix, but I mean, why? What's the point? What are they trying to do? That's exactly what I'm saying. I don't understand why they're trying to do that. I don't get it. What?
I think I need to defend Liberty a bit here. I think that this song will probably be used for some sort of advertising, for some hyping up videos coming around the Grand Prix. I think this will probably what the song will be used for. I think everyone was very critical of them changing the F1 anthem this time last year, and now everyone absolutely loves it. So I think we have to be a little bit patient to see exactly what they're doing with this song at the moment. And I must admit, I don't mind the song. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. So I think we just need to lay off Liberty a little bit, and let's see exactly what they're going to do with this.
Well, I think they've kind of confirmed that it's not replacing the actual F1 anthem, which is good.
Yeah, as it shouldn't,
Yeah,
it shouldn't be. But
they did that.
if they're using for advertising, then it's different. That's good.
Yeah, it'd be a PR disaster. If they did that. JB, is the Brian Tyler theme still staying? Yep, it is. Right. I think I'll read out probably, I don't know, a couple more questions and end of the stream. Ultraman, what has happened to your voice, Chaz? As usual, it's absolutely gone. JB, I'll end on this one. Who do you think will get the most F1 penalty points this season? I will say I'm going to say Giovinazzi for the most penalty points. It won't be like 9 or 10. He's not going to be close to a race ban, but I think he will have them. What do you think?
I think it's probably going to be Roman Grosjean. I feel sorry for the guy, but he just tries too hard, as Gunther Steiner said in the Netflix documentary lots of times, that he just tries too hard, and that is his downfall. And I think that he probably won't learn from that, and I think he will be involved in a few incidences once again this season.
Yeah, I think he'll be right there for penalty points. Also, Magnussen. Yeah, we'll see on that. Hopefully, we don't get tons of crashes, idiotic crashes in 2019. But that is the end of this podcast. This is the last podcast before the start of the season, and I cannot wait. It's been so long since we were last talking properly about an F1 race weekend. So long, in fact, the last time there was an F1 race weekend, me and Nib did the podcast live first time, which I think after the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. That's how long it's been since we've had an F1 race. It's been, what, 2-3 months then. So it's been a long time, and thank God F1 is finally back. But Nib, as ever, thanks, mate, for coming on and sharing your thoughts about what's going to happen in 2019.
Thanks, mate. It was finally good to be back on live, with no issues with anything. Of course, we had that little issue with Discord, but that was all sorted out very quickly. And of course, I cannot wait. I'll be going to all 3 days of F1 running at Albert Park next week, and I can absolutely not wait. This is going to be one of the best seasons that we have seen in a long time. I think it will be better than last year, and I can absolutely not wait. And once again, if you think you're hyped about the season, go and watch the Netflix documentary F1 Born to Survive. It is absolutely brilliant. Keeps you on the edge of your seat, even though you know what's going to happen. Well, I hope you know what's going to happen. If you're listening to the podcast, you should be knowing what happened last year. And that's Cyril Abitable and Christian Horner. The episode where they go to head is absolutely hilarious. So make sure that you go over and check that out. But once again, I'm so pumped up for this season. And thank you guys once again. And thank you, Chaz, as always.
Yep, thanks, mate, for coming on as usual. And also, I am going to try and watch the entire documentary series that Netflix before we get to first day of practice. I've heard it's very good, and I want to try and watch it before the season gets going. Hopefully, I can find the time for that. Yes, thanks to Nib for coming on. Now, I just want to say two things before I come to the end. One, I want to give an update as to content between now and, say, practice 1 in Australia. So tomorrow I will be streaming at the same time, 3 p.m. UK time. It's going to be a special episode of This Week in F1 where I'm going to be going deep into the Williams situation and what happened and how bad they are and how they can solve these issues. And also, I am uploading a season preview video to do with all the teams. It's going to be different than this. This was more about predicting what's going to happen. What this is going to be is analysing certain teams and certain situations, and a bit more analysis from my end about what's going to happen, especially at the front end of the grid. That will hopefully come out by Wednesday 4 p.m. If not, I'll upload it on Thursday at 4 p.m. or something like that. But I'm hoping to get it out before practice 1 in Australia. And then, of course, we have the Australian Grand Prix weekend. If you don't know, this is the plan. So I am actually going to do a practice watch along at 6 a.m. on Friday the 15th of March, where we're going to be watching practice with each other, and also that's going to serve as a test stream for a couple small things. I will be uploading my Australian Grand Prix preview, and previews from now on will be uploaded on a Friday, not a Thursday. So the preview for the Australian Grand Prix will be on Friday at 4 p.m. Then, of course, qualifying watch along Saturday morning, and then about 3 hours after qualifying finish, about 10 a.m. UK time, I'll do the qualifying review. Then, of course, race watch along on Sunday morning for about 4 hours. Then the race review at about 6 p.m. on Monday night. And then maybe podcast on Tuesday after the Australian Grand Prix that night on channel. But before I go, I just want to update you guys as to something else. Because during the week, whilst I was editing this video, this recorded season preview that's going to be coming out, I did a recording with someone who is also has a YouTube channel, and I'm going to try and post a link to his channel now, because I'm appearing on a show or a channel called the F1 Debate Show. Now I'm going to try and post the link to his channel now. But it's actually in the description. If you look, it's just below where it says don't forget to subscribe. It's right there. Make sure to go to that channel, because in about, I think, just over an hour's time, I think it's 6 p.m. UK time, I will be appearing on that channel. Not live, it was pre-recorded, but I'll be appearing on that channel doing a podcast about Lewis Hamilton. So make sure to go over there and check it out. I'll post it in the chat right now. There you go. Make sure to go and check that out at 6 p.m. UK time, and also make sure to go over there and subscribe to his channel. He's about to hit 500 subs. He's a great guy, fan of the channel. He's appeared in chat before, so yeah, make sure to go over there, help out with his channel and get him some more subs, and also make sure to check out the video I did with him. That will be uploaded at 6 p.m. UK time, so in about an hour and 5 minutes from now. So make sure to check that out very, very soon. But guys, that is it for today's podcast. Don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Again, I'll be covering all 2019 Australian Grand Prix stuff on the channel next weekend, so don't forget to subscribe. Bottom right of the screen, you can do it right there, or click on my channel name, go to my channel page and subscribe for more content like this. And also, like this video, comment down below what you thought of this video, and comment down below what are your predictions for the 2019 Formula 1 season for both the drivers and the constructors. Let me know in the comment section down below. Don't forget to check out my Discord server, link below in the description. That's the best place for notifications from videos. And also, I will be creating our F1 Fantasy League, and that's the first place I'm going to post it. So if you want to join that, make sure you join the Discord server. And as well, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Chaz6110, a great place to keep up to date and the channel. And check out my website, ChazzaHDF1, for more content like this. But guys, until the next podcast, which is going to be a couple days after the Australian Grand Prix, and until the next video / stream, which is tomorrow, same time, 3 p.m. UK time, and this week in F1 special about the 6 Williams, it has been me, ChazzaHD. Goodbye.